So the question is, we want to close files because we're good programmers and we want to do that. So the alternative to this would be to say, all right, if we catch some exception here, we want to close our files right here as an alternative. I would say that's exactly why we have the finally block. Because maybe as soon as we enter the finally block, because it will always execute as soon as we enter this try block, because we always want to close our files, that's where we want to place the that particular code.
I mean, after the block itself, like you try, you catch, and then anything after that's going to run regardless.
Oh, basically, don't return from here, right? Don't return from here. Rather, basically do something like this: close files, close the files, and then return, something like that. Well, first of all, okay, it could be considered a possible solution to an alternative to closing files inside the finally block. But in this case, you don't know if someone else at some point will add this, and then you're not closing the files. Number two, um, again, because there is a finally block, you would typically expect this work to be done under the guard of the finally block because it always executes. In it, okay, so here's another possibility. You say catch and catch over here. I'm thinking about any other scenario that would would want you to really uh, make sure that you don't do something like this at the end. Um, can't really think about any practical example without writing some code.
You don't create variables inside the try and catch,
No, you can create them, but if you create variables inside the catch blocks, their visibility will be limited only to that particular block. So you can. It's just like any other block of code. You can do anything you want in those blocks, but hopefully related to the exception case. But if you create a variable here, let's say, for example, if I say integer 3, right? Then the visibility of this integer will be ending, and its life cycle is ending as soon as we hit this closing brace, right? So that's a possibility. All right, what else? This example is a little messy, but let's see what else I wanted to say. So I guess the summary to this is right here that the finally block is a key tool for preventing any resource leaks. Place code in the finally block when closing a file or recovering other resources. So let's move on. If you there is an alternative with a scanner. Let me actually clear this up a little bit. So you can do something like this, an alternative to try and catch wrapping next int, next double, next anything else that could throw this input mismatch exception. You can say if the scanner has next int, then go ahead and uh, use this integer value, maybe, and say value equals scanner next int. Otherwise, we may just say print line no integer was available to input. Whereas over here, we can say input was accepted. So the scanner class provides a set of methods which preview they preview the the input without processing it. And so this is just a situation specific to the scanner class, but many other classes are designed with some other methods that could give you a hint regarding whether something is about to happen or not. So in this case, you can rely on this method which returns true or false. So if it returns true, then I can safely say get next int. So let me demonstrate this. Again, I will say enter an integer. But I cannot force user to enter an integer. They could type in anything they'd like. So let's try this program. So say 1, 2, 3. It says input was accepted. I run again, type some garbage, and it says no integer was available to input because has next int prevented me into going and saying let's accept this value. So we didn't crash. If this wasn't in place and I type in some garbage, then this line of course will cause that input mismatch exception again. Yet another way to prevent this from happening. So just an example that this type of alternative exists. When we create objects, and we needed the scanner object in this very example, what I could do is to create a variable that refers to the scanner, and later on say scanner. So then do some work, and then later on create the new scanner. Okay. In cases like this, when we just declare a reference to an object, a variable which type is a reference to an object, we don't have to initialize it with the reference to the new object. Well, maybe when I do some work here, I'm trying to select whether to take this input from a user or maybe take this input from a file. So that might be the reason for doing new scanner and passing a certain input stream to that particular scanner object to begin with. Maybe it depends on some other choices that I have to make. So if I run this, if I save it, and if I run this, it says enter an integer. Okay, good. So I'm going to enter an integer or whatever, exit out. But then perhaps somehow I couldn't do it. So if I save this, right now it sort of like knows right away that I'm doing something inappropriate. So let me try to trick the compiler into compiling